Good afternoon, everyone. It's Graham Coath with another My Music. In a minute, I'm going to be speaking to Kevin and Chris from Makeshift Nunnery. No, sorry. Oh, I knew that wasn't the name of the band. They'll remind me the name of the band any minute now. Just after the...
I need to get going, Mel. See you later.
Seal Party. That's it. Knew I'd get
Party.
there.
That's right, Graham. Yes.
Seal Party. Kevin, Chris, thanks for joining me today to talk about Seal Party, not Makeshift Nunnery. Chris, you'll be privy to that when you see this back. So you'll find out a little bit more. Where are you both coming from?
Coming from the San Francisco Bay Area. He's in San Francisco proper. I'm in the East Bay, right across the bay in San Leandro. But all of our work is done in San Francisco.
There you go.
Yeah, at a legendary studio where Chris McGrew works full time and where I work some of the time when I'm able to.
There you go. And is there, this is important, is there an eatery or something nice in between where you both are? So is there a stop-off point? Yeah, right. Okay.
Oh, there is. In West Oakland. Yeah, in West Oakland, where a rehearsal studio is. There are a number of great eateries and great breweries. So yeah, that tends to be the in-between.
Well, you see, you've got to have that, haven't you? If you've got that, if you've got a few miles apart, you've got to have those kind of in-between spaces where you can stop and you know, imbibe.
We often gather at the studio. You know, that's our central meeting point for the most part.
Is it? It's a lock-in, is it?
It's a lock-in.
It is.
I love the idea of having some kind of liminal space in between where we can meet and, you know, have beverages and discuss and things like that before we actually set the mics up, though. I think it's a far more civilized approach.
Yeah, we might have to think about that.
Yeah, there you go. I may have sparked an idea. Now, very quickly, where did both of you meet?
We met in the agent's office before going on a tour several years ago. We were both wrangled in to do a month-long stint in Beijing playing disco music, and the organizer of this tour had to act quickly and grab people from various sections of his world, and so he brought me in on keyboards and Chris in on drums, and we met in the agent's office saying, okay, we're a band. I didn't know if Chris was the drummer or the bass player, so we were just kind of playing it off, and I was like, okay, I can't make any references to his instruments at this point. But then we went to China and became fast friends over in China.
Fast friends, not fast food, fast friends.
Right? Yeah. So actually, the fast food was quite welcome over there because we discovered the cuisine that they actually eat in China isn't like General Tso's chicken and such. And the food over there was quite challenging for me. So we had.
I loved it.
Kevin loved it. A lot of people loved it. Mm-hmm. I'm a pickier eater, so like I was challenged. We came across a life-size statue of Colonel Sanders while walking in the park one day, and I was like, "Oh!"
I had exactly the same epiphany when I went to Turkey on my honeymoon. Exactly the same thing. We both of us had pretty bad stomach pain, etc., from local food or whatever, and then walking down the road, there was a McDonald's sign, and it was like, yes.
I felt both ashamed and glad to be an American.
Yeah, I know. Right, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's not one of those things you should admit to, maybe, but it's it's one of those things.
It's one of those things.
But here we are.
Where did music start for both of you? Who first got you into music? Was it your parents? Was it friends? Kevin?
For me, it was more than anyone else my grandmother, who would come to visit, Esther Buchanan, and she was a big fan of boogie woogie piano. And by that point, arthritis had taken over her hands, and so she couldn't really play anymore. But she got me a book of boogie woogie piano for beginners, and she would quiz me over the notes on the staff. And so she taught me how to read music and got me started. with that sort of New Orleans-based music at a very early age. So Esther Buchanan, the late great, was my main introduction.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. What about you, Chris?
Well, my dad is a drummer to this day, and so I kind of grew up with the drum set in the basement, his practice kit, and it just became, like one of my toys right away from the time I was very small. And then I would go and be his little roadie, help him out on his big band gigs that he played when I was growing up. And so I had an early introduction. And then when I was in college, I had a really great teacher, and that kind of put me into a different mindset with regard to music and understanding its important role in my life, I guess. And then after college, I realized, oh shit, even though I didn't study this in school, I have to do this. So then I just I dove in and played in several bands at a time and worked in construction and grinded it out until I could make a living doing the music full time.
Yeah. Was there anyone, for either of you, was there anyone along the way that opened your eyes to a lot of new music? Were any friends or anyone like that when you really must listen to this all the time? They were really on the edge of stuff that was happening. Kevin, you're nodding.
I am. I heard a lot through my older brother. So I have a brother who's 6 years older, and when he went off to university, he left his LP collection behind. So I would sift through and find a lot of music that turned out to be, for a lot of people, very unfashionable, but that I really liked. So very early Genesis, one that really got me was Nursery Crime. And I wore that record out. And that was one that none of my friends had heard before. And they had heard Peter Gabriel, but they didn't know that he was in Genesis. And it was one of those I got to share with my friends because my brother had left it behind.
Oh, I love those kind of moments. Here, guys, listen, it's a song about a giant hogweed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Got anything about it being raining again? Or no, that's a completely different band.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's brilliant. I mean, the theatrics of that music, amazing.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I love that
creative
stuff.
And such great storytelling. Little nuggets of that. Harold the Barrel. 3 minutes of just genius storytelling. Yeah.
What about you, Chris? Anyone that?
Well, when I was about 11, we moved to downtown Chicago, and I kind of fell in with a bunch of friends that were not unlike the characters in High Fidelity, super snarky music fans, and I got introduced to all kinds of interesting, independent music, I guess, and the Meat Puppets and Husker Du and Sonic Youth. And I really loved REM in their early days. I got to see REM with my fake ID at the Cubby Bear in Chicago, which was a crazy experience. And changed my perspective on things a little bit. And so it was interesting. We just got to play for a couple of those people at this show in Chicago that we got to go do. And it was kind of interesting a lot of them had never seen me play drums, but they were kind of instrumental in pointing me musically into some directions I wouldn't have found otherwise.
Oh, that's great. Now, you see, you can tell where you're from because of the way that you say Husker Du, because over here we'd say Husker Du, and
but there's the umlaut. You're ignoring.
Yeah, I know. Umlaut? It's all very posh, right? It's all very posh.
What is it, posh to ignore punctuation?
Absolutely. And I don't even know what we do with Bob Mould. I mean, I just think it's just oh dear. Yeah, what great music though. So I mean, REM from sort of Athens, Georgia area. Was that a big scene in terms of influence for either of you?
Not really the scene, but just that band. But maybe for Kevin.
Yeah, for me, REM was a huge influence, and that was the first big show that I was able to go to without parents being involved.
Wow.
At Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati. And yeah, I really loved that eponymous collection that IRS had put together, and I wore that out. I played it all the time. And I mean, it's through REM, I think a lot of us in the US were exposed to Big Star. And it was Chris McGrew who got me listening to Big Star. And so, yeah, I think that pipeline of REM becoming huge here led to, Let's Active and other bands like that entering our world.
Those Big Star albums had a big influence on me. And I feel like with this record we just finished, I kind of, for the first time ever, came close to that kind of production value and sort of range on a whole album, which is, surprisingly difficult to achieve. Those guys really, in 1972, they did something special.
Yeah. Now this is the album that you're talking about. Do you just want to talk about the album that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what all we want to talk about.
That's absolutely. Well, no, come on. It's nice to reminisce. It's nice to go back a little. It's nice to go back a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, talk about that album. I mean, I've been listening to that album today, as I said to Kevin just before you came on to talk. I had it on full block, and you've got to have it loud, right?
Good.
Because
I agree.
it's kind of that kind of album.
It
is a big production, big production. So who thought of this idea? Who manifested this big sound? But between the lot of you, or
I think I was kind of driving a lot of the production choices, and Kevin drove a lot of the songwriting. It's kind of how it broke down. Like Kevin was doing the heavy lifting on all these interesting chords, which enabled me to interest a lot of these musicians in coming and putting parts on the tracks. It made it a lot easier because the songs were so interestingly written and the chords were built out. So, I just got to run with it. Yeah. And, because we're a two-headed monster instead of four, like, in the old days, it was a lot easier for me to call an audible, and just be like, all right, we're going to do this. And if Kevin doesn't like it, I'll eat the money I just paid this guy.
Right.
That's pretty much my idea.
You mentioned Big Star there, and you can hear the influence of Big Star in terms of the record. But, production wise, over the years, is there anyone sort of heading towards this record that you've really kind of admired production wise, that you thought, I just want to get some of that kind of production magic in there?
I have an idea arrangement wise of who that would be, which for me would be XTC. I'm a massive XTC fan, and the way that they were able to bring in outside music in some of those later records, because we both grew up playing in 4-piece bands where it was always the four of us doing everything, maybe some overdubs, but not that many. And now the canvas widened with McGrew having access to invite these other musicians. So I think of a record like Oranges and Lemons, where you see all of these other musicians coming in and there's so much paint on the canvas and it's just kind of maximalist, and there are all these details in the corners of the mix and that kind of thing. And I think that was a huge inspiration for me, arrangement wise.
Yeah, and great songwriting, great bass playing as well.
Oh, great bass playing, yeah. Oh,
have to say that.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Have to say that because Colin's been on this program. So there we go.
So I guess production wise, I'd have to say, like, I was super inspired by Ken Scott and by that Hunky Dory record really had a big impact on me. And of course Glyn Johns, I think I have to shout him out as a major influence. George Martin, I like to kind of create epic sounds out of small songs. That's kind of like a thing I love to do, is take something that could stand on its own just with vocals and drums, and then, find a way to flesh it out and layer it up so that it's big and huge and expansive.
I'm just thinking as well, for me, like some of the first times I heard some of the Todd Rundgren albums as well, and it was like, oh man,
yeah, he's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mm-hmm. in terms of all of that, the sonics of production, and you've got some of that in there as well, haven't you? You've got some of that, largeness, grandiosa in there, which I love.
I hope so. I really love Todd Rundgren's chord choices too.
Yeah.
I mean, just beautiful, that Philadelphia inspired use of these slash chords and things like that. And yeah,
I love that.
And isn't that great?
just gorgeous. Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah.
And what he does really well, like in that particular song too, is that it's the way the chord is juxtaposed over the melody that is really making it. I mean, the melody is juxtaposed over the chord that makes it, really pop like that. And I think, Kevin did a really great job at setting up those kinds of relationships, and that then makes it possible to do the layering without getting in the way of the vocal, because you're just sort of, you're giving every instrumentalist this really big signpost, like over here, and so we didn't really have to tell people what to play. We brought in professionals, gave them the music, and kind of gave them the mood that we wanted to strike, and let them go. And 90% of the time it came out better than I would have, gotten if I had specifically asked for something.
Right.
Now,
and we wanted all them to sound like themselves. We wanted them to come in on the tracks and do what they do and not try to imitate other past musicians or anything like that.
Which is important, because all the people we brought in are capable of doing that. Like if you told them, like, okay, we need you to, we need you to pull a, blank, give us your best Peter Frampton, all of them could have done that, but then that would have sucked.
Now, Kevin, earlier you were talking about a vocalist who's got a unique voice, Peter Gabriel. You've got some voices on this album as well.
Oh, thanks.
You really have got some voices on this album. Yeah, I mean, where did you start with the vocal side of things in terms of?
Well,
go for it.
Yeah. Well, in terms of bringing in other singers to come onto this, Renee Paget was absolutely key to making a lot of this work, and she sings lead on Elijah McClain, but sings harmonies on a lot of the other things. And I had worked with Renee when she was producing her solo album, so I came in and wrote vocal arrangements for her, and heard how well she was able to blend with her own voice, and just the interesting tones she was able to come up with. So when we started on this, we knew that we wanted to get Renee in as much as we could on a great deal of this. And then through some of the other players on here, we were able to find Kimiko Joy, who is married to my old friend Darian Gray, who's this brilliant jazz drummer who plays with Collectivity and Honey Knuckles and all these people. And Kimiko, is an astonishingly great singer. And then Rich Armstrong, who is on here as a trumpet player. So he plays that trumpet solo you hear closing the record, the very end of the record. And
he did all the horn arrangements.
Did all the horn arrangements too. Some with Daniel Casares too. But and he's a really, really strong harmony vocalist as well. So getting the three of them in here, having them work together as this section, and hearing the way their timbres played off each other was really great.
We have the luxury of working in a studio that has amazing acoustics. It's actually the room where Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young recorded Deja Vu.
Yeah, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. It's done in this tiny room.
And so we make a lot of use of the acoustics of the room by having people record together and certainly sing together, because when you can hear the way the blend is happening in the room, with people at the same time, we just make these micro adjustments that make it blend better. And it makes it really a lot quicker and easier to set up those kinds of beautiful blends than it would be if you were one at a time.
Right.
Especially
that explains so much. I mean, that is such a classic album in terms of vocal harmonies, right? Oh, there you go. What was that like, being in that room?
Oh, I still am in awe of that room, and I'm finding new records that were made in there that I didn't realize were done in that space. And yeah, I never take that for granted at all. I'm
Me neither.
I treat that room very reverently.
Well, I think it's a sacred space, because it's been a place where people have made records and worked out songs and gotten into it for 50 years. And, just like any church that's been around that long, you can feel it when you walk in there. There's sort of a residual like haze in the room that I call the musical truth that's just in there. And, it's our job to kind of set up the circumstances and the technical stuff so that we can, capture what happens when musicians listen to that in there. And
now, correct me if I'm wrong though, a space like that doesn't come cheap.
Well, I mean, one of the incentives I have for running a commercial studio, which is not the most lucrative business in the world, is that I get to use this room for my own devices. And
wow.
And it's being a drummer, you still need a studio to do what you do. And being a producer, who likes to help other people make records, I want to have a good space to do that in, where everything works smoothly and the flow can be quick. And so for me, it's like a dream situation because I get to do both of those things, and I get to have this amazing workshop.
So did you actually experiment in that space as well, or did you have a very clear idea of exactly what you were recording within that space by the time you got to the space?
Well, we tend to do, Kevin and I we used to do in past records, we would do like a whole pre-production recording.
Yeah.
On a lesser quality system maybe, and then we would kind of map everything out and have the sequencing, down before we would go in to start actual recording. We did that on a few records in the past with Griddle, our former band. But it sort of goes quickly the way we work. And sometimes it's a shame to not have that initial idea captured in the right resolution. So we've come around to just doing our pre-production in the studio because we can. And sometimes we end up with something, especially when it's just the two of us recording piano and drums together. A couple songs on the record, we just kept those and built on them because it came out just the way we wanted. And
so effectively a couple of them are worked up jams that then, or have elements of a worked up jam in there.
Yeah. I mean, basically they're, Kevin would come in with a song form and then we develop that. So most of these weren't really written as jams, but they were explored songs. And then as we're exploring, we have the record button on.
I'd say there was one that was fully written in that room, but I had not worked out the chords in advance at all. And that was Jimmy Just Clams Up. So we had done the basics for another song. And we should mention Liam Wesley Craddock.
We got to mention Liam.
Was in for a lot of the formation of these original forms. And he's a multi-instrumentalist. So depending on what it called for, it would be, okay, I'll be on piano, Chris, you be on drums, Liam, guitar, percussion, bass, like sort of whatever he needed to do. So he was kind of the Dave Gregory in a way.
Yeah.
And so we had finished recording the basics of another song and we had a little extra time. And so Chris and Liam said, hey, we're just going to turn on the session and just play some chords. We'll give you a click track and just play some chords to it. And so I was improvising those chords in what felt like a form, and that ended up becoming Jimmy Just Clams Up. So it wasn't worked up in advance at all. Those were just.
What about 476? We did that one in a similar way. Did you have that one mapped out before, or was that also a jam?
I had that chord sequence worked out for a while before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It just felt like a jam. It was
felt
so
like
fluid.
Right. Well, it did to me because I was just listening to those chords, and Liam and I on that song, we just went in and thought, well, what would it be like if we put like a Brazilian bateria behind these sort of spare piano chords, and then it kind of went from there. So they all take their own sort of course. The songs, some of them will start with a lyric, and then like Elijah McClain. That one started with the lyric, and then the chords and melody and everything got built around it. So it kind of just depends on where the idea germinates.
You definitely sound as though you had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we had a blast.
Yeah, we
wonderful.
did. We definitely made the best of our pandemic.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
it absolutely kept us sane.
Yeah. Was it almost as though you didn't want it to stop at one point?
Well, the funny thing is that it never does. I don't know if you know this, but like this is a perpetual motion machine, because the minute you finish something, there are 10 things that you have to do, or else the thing you just did is pointless. You know, like, you finish the record, you're not done.
No,
you have to promote this thing and get people to care about it, or else it's sort of demoralizing. You know, you made something really good and didn't back it up. It's almost like not believing in yourself. So, you know,
keep the wheels moving on the next one.
Yeah. And
are you quite good at both of you at letting go once something's finished, or you ever feel like you want to go back and fiddle with what you've just?
We did a lot of fiddling, but Kevin and I are both pretty good at being quick about it, because we both get a charge out of completion, you know, and have both been in bands that took forever to finish things. And so I think we both have like sort of a, you know, an impulse to get it done and move on, because, you know, Kevin has a lot of musical ideas, and I tend to have a lot of production ideas. So if we just stay in one spot too long, we could whirlpool out and kill the song.
Yeah. You know? I'd say the solution to having bits of a song idea that you feel like you haven't quite realized yet is in the live versions. So I'd say I'm pretty good about having the recorded version. The recorded version is out the door. The baby is birthed and off to preschool. But, you know, if you've always thought like, oh, what if we tried that in 12/8 rather than 4/4 or something like that? And then you can try that for the live versions.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And actually that adds something to the live versions as well, right?
Right. I mean, we're believers in making sure that the audience comes to a show and gets a unique experience. You know, I really feel strongly that, like, if you're trying to execute what you played on the record and you're not giving the audience like a unique moment, you're cheating them. They can listen to the record at home.
Right. And I really want every show to be
that's different. What my wife moans about all the time. She said, why would you want to go and see that band? It will sound just like the record. I said, no, it won't. Trust me, that band, you know, and that's true. I tend to go and see bands where they mess around with their music
because
live.
You're getting something special then, you know, and like something that was just for you, you know. And we build our shows to kind of like make that obvious, I think, so that the audiences really get that feeling like, I was there for that time, you know. And every show we did on this tour was pretty different. You know, if you were there as an audience member for every show, I think the takeaway would be, wow, that was different every time. And
and we had different guests.
So guys, now tell everyone that's watching, listening to this, what do they get when they get this album? What's the experience that they get?
Oh, Kevin, that's a good one for you.
Okay. The experience of this album is a warm, enveloping bath of sound. There's a lot that happens over the course of the 44 minutes. It moves quickly, but you'll be rewarded with repeated visits to this bath, because you'll find details throughout the course of the 44 minutes that you didn't hear the first time. So it's a varied experience. It goes through a lot of different places, and there are a lot of different textures, different instruments being brought in. But it's a very warm, welcoming, happy record, I think. There's something really happy about this record that
I like to call it like our journey to a joyous decline, you know, because it's like, you know, that we're experiencing like an inflection point moment right now. And I think over the course of human history, these inflection points are often met with this like doom and gloom, you know, the world is ending kind of a mindset, but without really focusing on like what's possible after this era, you know, or when this thing unfolds and becomes something else, what will we have? You know, is it necessarily going to be the end of everything? You know, it's actually a beginning every time there's an ending. So, you know, we're trying to keep our eyes on what's good about humans, I guess, you know, instead of focusing on what's messed up about them, and, you know.
And I feel it's a real music fans treat, this album as well, because it's one of those albums where when people listen to it, they go, now that's a little bit, oh, no, it's not. That's a little bit, it's not like that. Oh, it's and there'll be tinges of things that they recognize, but then they won't recognize it. And it's enough that they recognize it, but it's not enough that it's a copy. And so it's a beautiful new thing.
Yeah, we
But
call
with all
those
of those
touchstones. That's our word for it. You know, we're kind of trying to hit these memory touchstones and draw out like
Well
your
done.
experience when you had that without copying something. It's like an interpretation of it that just is just familiar enough to make you go, oh, wait, like you said, you know, like.
Yeah. And do you know the best thing about albums like this? I'm really infusing it now for the audience, so they're going to go and listen to this album, right?
Thank
But
you.
The best thing about albums like this is, especially if you're an album geek like me, is that what you'll do is once you've listened to it, you'll sit there for the rest of the evening going through your record collection, going, what did that remind me of? What influenced that? And it's a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing. When music does that, it's a really, really good thing, right? Because it warms you both to the past and the present. It makes you go, I love this album because this album reminds me of all the great things on all of these albums, but it's not those albums. It's this album. So now I love this album, but I still love all of those albums as well. And then you disappear into a lovely little wormhole of listening.
Oh, thanks.
2 or 3
That's
days.
beautiful.
I love that. And with my favorite albums, I love it when artists kind of shine a light on the music that really touched them growing up. You mentioned Todd Rundgren before. And with Daft Punk, I loved how there's a scene in that Daft Punk movie where it's just the two of them driving around listening to the beginning of A Wizard, a True Star. Like, it's just the two of them driving through the desert listening to International Feel on really good speakers. And it's like, oh, of course Daft Punk loves that song. Like, and I love seeing that, and I love when artists do that. So that makes me really happy to hear you say that. Thank you.
No,
yeah, and
absolutely.
We get a chance to work. Kevin and I work together on. I can't even count how many records we've worked together on as a production team, at the studio, it becomes like a natural thing to do because we've been digesting all this music for all these years, and we've become practiced at doing this little touchstone move that it's now really starting to become second nature for us, so that we don't necessarily even discuss it all that much.
It's just a telepathic thing.
The same way your scales and rudiments come out when you're playing spontaneously after you've worked on them. They become like muscle memory. And I think like these reference points are starting to get that way for Kevin and I as we get to this a certain age,
Yeah.
It's, I feel like we're able to kind of bring together all those experiences, helping other people make records to make our own better now. And
that's where we're headed today. Actually, it's 9 a.m. here, and we're both about to head into this studio for the next several days, working on someone else's project. So we're in the midst of that right now.
Now, for all of you that aren't musical out there, scales aren't things that belong on fish. They are they are things that that are quite useful on an instrument. And rudiments are not a weird kind of mint.
Although that would be an interesting name for a mint product.
Oh, wouldn't it? Rudiments.
But they make the breath smell bad.
They're kind of like those little patterns that drummers do, which they build up to make songs. But there you go. So now you're educated as to that.
Building blocks, as it were. Yeah,
they're the building blocks of music. But of course, if you just want to go out there and hit things or bash away, that's cool as well.
Oh yeah,
that's how we started. That's how we got here.
Now, listen, before you go, you have to answer the last question, which I always ask everybody. All right. And I don't think this is going to be difficult for you two guys at all. If you could work with anybody, alive or dead, who would it be?
Ooh.
I mean, the trouble is there's so many people, right? So it becomes difficult.
I would really love to work with Brian Eno at some point in my life. That's always been kind of like a, one of those bucket list dream producers to work with. What about you, Kevin?
Just to see where he takes you, right? Because
I mean, that's just the whole thing, is that like, you can't predict. No. I've heard some crazy stories from friends who've worked with them, and
we're going to lock you away in a castle because the acoustics are great here, or
man, Prairie Prince was telling me, we were hanging out in the studio, and he was telling me that when they were doing My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, which was done at another studio in San Francisco, he said that Brian Eno came in and he had these like brand new, acrylic drums that he had just gotten from, given to him, and he was trying to tune them up, and they're notoriously difficult to tune.
Yeah.
And he was struggling with it, and Brian Eno just threw up his hands and went and got a metal trash can and a plastic trash can, and he like basically made him play the drums for that on these trash cans. And those are the drum sounds on that record.
It's another mind, isn't it? It's just another mind. Yeah. What about you, Kevin?
I'm torn. There are a few different people that I had in mind. Tony Visconti, I would really, really love to work with. And I've been recently revisiting some of those Tony Visconti productions on Bowie records, and
like Heroes, man. Oh God, what a great record.
Yeah. Well, and the way his tones changed over the years, and I feel like he never really gets the credit that he's due for his work on so many of those. And
he's still producing records too.
Oh yeah, he's still producing excellent records. I would love to work with Tony Visconti.
And look, that the stories are going to be great.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that's good. At the end of
Eddie
the day,
Kramer still around? He'd be good too. I think Eddie Kramer's still working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he'd be another good one to work with.
So it's interesting. You're both going down a route there. So production's important, clearly, to both of you. Absolutely. What about, very quickly then, any particular singer that you might want to get on a record?
I would love to work with Liz Phair.
Who wouldn't?
Love Liz Phair, and I love the way she sounds on other people's productions. Yeah. There's that great Shudder to Think soundtrack that they did for First Love, Last Rites, and she appears on there doing Erecting a Movie Star, and the way her voice sounds on that song is just, it's so gorgeous. It's great. I would love to sing with her sometime.
There's a couple singers that I've met through working at the Black Cat, which is a jazz club in San Francisco here that brings in a lot of global touring jazz artists, and I work there as an engineer, so I get to meet a lot of these amazing musicians. And there's a woman named Renee Neuville, who's, you may not know her, but she's been on a lot of records. She's an amazing singer. And then there's also this woman, Alita Moses. Like there's so many really incredible vocalists out there that just are not necessarily even widely known yet. I kind of think it would be fun to bring some of those people that have all those, backing vocal credits. Put them up
what? Some of the greatest backing singers in the world became the greatest singers in the world, right?
Yeah, it's harder to sing backup. It's a lot harder.
Yeah. You just have to look at the roster over the years. Started off as a backing singer. Major star.
Yeah. If anybody out there wants to do some research, check out Renee Neuville. Her credit list goes from like pop to R&B and back, and she's got an amazing instrument. She can just go.
Well, Chris, if she's on social when this goes out, we'll tag her.
Oh, tag Renee. It's Neuville is how her last name is spelled. Yeah.
And then hopefully she'll go, yeah, that's me.
Oh, she knows who I am. I'm going to hit her up. Believe me. That idea is not just going to be a fantasy. We're going to make that happen.
There you go. There you go. I'm excited for the next record already. And this one's not even really buzzing yet.
Yeah. Right? The next record's already underway. We got about half a dozen really strong ideas underway for the next one already. So,
that's fantastic. So listen, most important question of all, where do people get it? And of course, as usual, folks, don't just download it, buy it. So where do people get it?
Well, it comes out August 5th, and it's full length. I would recommend people go to Bandcamp. Sealparty.bandcamp is the easiest way to pre-order it. You can get the physical copy. You can get the digital files if you would like.
Yeah. What physical format's it in?
It is currently in compact disc form. Soon we're going to have it in vinyl as well.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll have vinyl too. The vinyl is not in our hot little hands yet, but soon.
It will take only 8 or 9 months due to the backlog that the pressing plants have, because vinyl's become popular again, thank God. And everybody wants to place vinyl orders, including all the major labels. So they bump us independent artists down the queue.
I know. Do you know we've got a new vinyl pressing plant in the UK now?
I didn't know. Where?
Yeah. No, it's a very good question. I think it's Manchester area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember the name?
Brand new. Because
maybe their queue isn't long yet. Maybe we can jump in.
Yeah, maybe, because we just need more vinyl out there.
We do
desperately.
So there you go. Maybe look into that. You just look up new UK vinyl pressing plant, and you'll find it.
We'll do that
by the power of Google, and let's make that happen. But
hey, and if we end up getting it pressed through them because they can do it faster, we'll give you a free copy.
There you go.
It's called Press On. I just found it.
Kevin is not slow when it comes to research, man.
Kevin's on it now.
He is.
There we go. Let's hold up the CD one more time for all of those that are on Spotify.
Yeah, Tony Calzetta did the artwork.
Calzaretta.
I'm sorry, Tony.
Tony, beautiful thing.
Yeah, he really went to town on it. Captured our sound really nicely, I thought.
Yeah, he did really beautiful work. And this one's still in the plastic, but the inside's really nice too.
No, you get it out, listen to it, put it in your car, drive 100 miles, listen to it.
It is a good driving record, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the only way to listen to this album. So just do it. Don't just download it. God. You know, what's the fun of that? Get the CD, burn that up.
It sounds better off the physical too. You know, the streaming audio, it definitely, you do lose a little something. There's a little shimmer that's gone, when you stream it, that you get back when you play the physical. So
no, totally agree. So yeah, buy the CD at the moment. Then when the vinyl comes out, buy the vinyl, because by that time you've worn out the CD. And then buy the T-shirt, just because. Why not?
There you go. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah. We can use the support. We can keep making these records.
Yeah, do it, because if you don't,
we will anyway.
Stuff, yeah, exactly. But don't tell them that. But if you buy it, it feeds these guys, and they need their food. Besides which, they're going to find a place between where they live to really eat out. So that you need to, give your money now. Anyway, thanks both of you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed the music. Keep doing it. Keep doing it for all of us, won't you? Because that's important. And we'll see you for another one of these probably next week. But until now, this has been My Music with Graham Coath, Kevin, and Chris from Seal.
Thanks a lot.
Bye for now.